Waiting on a few more thumbs ups. All right, looking pretty good. Well, we're just a couple of weeks away from delivery of our recommended budget for fiscal year 2026. It is a challenging budget to prepare because there are so many financial variables right now, including a murkier national economic outlook. We know we're phasing out Biden-era rescue plan funds and experiencing greater unpredictability with federal funding outlook on the whole. And just like families and businesses everywhere, we are also paying more for everything because of inflation, and we're concerned that recent tariff announcements will only add to this cost. Just like we spent the last 18 months talking about a transportation improvement program, our budget represents a community improvement program where we're providing the funding necessary to deliver quality services, quality schools, and a safer community. And as we await the appraisals, we know that it's important to govern in normal and predictable ways that include accounting for the increased cost of governing. We know, too, that talking about appraisals, equalization, the impact on tax rates is difficult and complicated, especially because we know some Nashvillians will ultimately pay more property taxes even as we establish a historically low property tax rate. But Nashville's overall popularity and overall low taxes mean people continue to relocate here. And as we grow, we have to provide services to more residents than ever. Just this week, we welcomed 40 Nashville Fire Department recruits, with 20 more joining this summer to support the fire department's work serving our growing city. Providing timely, quality services to the community remains a priority, and as we discuss our upcoming budget, we'll continue to focus on doing both the small and big things well. Speaking of which, this week, the courts again validated our Choose How You Move program, a program supported by 66% of voters in November, vetted by multiple lawyers, accountants, the state, comptroller, and the public, a program built from more than 66,000 pieces of input over more than a decade of planning. Transit is legal, as every fair observer already knew. From the very beginning, community has shaped this process, and with Executive Order 54, we continued that focus by creating the Advisory Committee on Transportation. The committee will continually review the implementation work for Choose How You Move, provide feedback and guidance, and provide reports and recommendations to me and our transportation professionals regarding the Choose How You Move Transit Improvement Program. Today, I'm pleased to announce the appointment of 9 community members to the Choose How You Move Advisory Committee on Transportation, and they are Ashley Northington, Clay Haynes, Gary Moore, Gracie Sloan, Jennifer Carlett, Joseph Gutierrez, Rashid Fakhrudin, Walter Searcy, and Zach Young. They'll join Vice Mayor Angie Henderson and the 5 members selected by the Metro Council earlier this month on this 15-person committee. I want to extend my appreciation to the many people who've expressed an interest in serving on this committee, and I encourage everyone to stay engaged in the program as we continue to build it out. Choose How You Move is Metro Nashville's largest ever capital program. It will modernize how we move by delivering sidewalks, signals, service, and safety improvements across Davidson County. And taking it from concept to reality requires someone who can see both the big picture and who has a keen attention to detail, and someone who's comfortable working with a wide variety of people and partners to deliver the community's vision. So today I am pleased to be joined by our new Chief Program Officer, Sabrina Sussman. Sabrina most recently served as Chief of Staff to the U.S. Department of Transportation Deputy Secretary Polly Trottenberg and Senior Advisor to Secretary Pete Buttigieg. She's worked on the leading edge of transportation policy for nearly 2 decades, executed operations for public and private organizations, has a deep understanding of transportation funding, and has a demonstrated talent for engaging people from all walks of life. We're excited to welcome Sabrina as Nashville's first Chief Program Officer, and I'd like to invite her to say a few words. Thank you, Sabrina, for being here.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Mayor O'Connell. It is an honor and a privilege to be joining your administration at this important moment in Nashville's history. It feels a little bit like the stars have aligned. At a time when there is plenty of division, Nashvillians made one thing quite clear in November. They want and they expect more from their transportation system. After a decade of careful community engagement and over 66 pieces of input, as the mayor mentioned, Nashville has coalesced around a vision for a system that protects and prioritizes all users at all times, regardless of whether they are behind the wheel of a car, riding on a bike or a bus, or walking these beautiful streets. Choose How You Move investments will enable transformation across this community, and I'm eager to be a part of this work. The opportunity comes at a critical time for our nation. More than ever before, strong local leadership is needed to drive progress, especially in the shadow of federal inaction. Having served at both the federal and local levels before, I have an honest accounting of the challenges ahead of us. And in this moment, Nashville's decision to fund transformative change sets an example for communities across the country. Eyes are on this team, and I couldn't be more excited to be here and to lead it. I've already had the opportunity to meet many of the incredibly talented members of Metro's leadership, and I look forward to working closely with them and their teams. And of course, getting to know the brilliant journalists that tell Nashville's stories every single day. My passion for this work is fueled both by my professional history and also some important personal experiences. While I may be new to Nashville, I'm very eager to settle in. Thank you so much for welcoming me to this community.
Well, thank you, Sabrina. Sabrina is beginning a full-time transition to Nashville and spent time yesterday house hunting. She'll be transitioning into this role over the next few weeks, and we look forward to her joining us full-time in late June. During the transition, Kendra Abkowitz, who is also here with us today, will serve formally as the acting program director for the Choose How You Move program, a role she has been filling informally in addition to her work as Senior Director of Sustainability and Resiliency. Kendra was instrumental in the development of the Transportation Improvement Program and has been leading implementation efforts from this office since the overwhelming passage of Choose How You Move. And I appreciate her willingness to serve as the acting program director as we implement the initial components of the program and as Sabrina begins her role as Chief Program Officer. I want to invite all Nashvillians to join us in the remaining Transit Month events. You can view a full list at nashconnector.org. Everyone can participate in the Nashville Connector Transit Challenge by taking the pledge to ride WeGo Public Transit during the month of April. I'm excited for the 11th annual Ticket to Ride event on Friday, April 25th. We will take the Music City Star from Riverfront Station to Donaldson Station, where a number of nonprofits will host NDOT, TDOT, WeGo council members and our office for project updates and information. The Music City Star is free to ride for that event. It's a great chance to learn more about our transit system and experience the train if you haven't already. And then last week, in a different transportation dimension, we welcomed more international flights to B&A directly from Ireland and Iceland. It's another example of Nashville's growing popularity with international travelers. But recent tariff actions by the Trump administration are expected to impact the number of international travelers, and this is about more than tourism. We know that tariff announcements will also impact the bottom line for many Nashville businesses, especially for small businesses. Canada, for instance, is a significant trading partner to Tennessee. Tennessee exported more than $7 billion in goods to Canada last year, 20% of the state's total goods exported, making Canada the largest export market for Tennessee. Mexico and China were the next largest consumers of Tennessee exports, the latter of which will now be charging a 125% tariff on U.S. goods. In 2024, Tennessee exported a record $38.9 billion of goods to the world, and the Nashville region alone exported $10.4 billion. So we know that actions at the federal level do have local impacts. Trade policy matters to local businesses, and there are certainly small businesses who trade with China, either exporting their goods or importing products, who will experience dire challenges as the impact of what is currently known about tariffs. What's more, the uncertainty in the market has a real impact on the bottom line of both businesses and residents. So again, we are trying to focus on predictability and certainty as much as we can locally, but federal uncertainty adds to challenges to our economic vitality and contributes to instability in our efforts to budget. As one final note, if you haven't been to Centennial Park lately, you're missing out on one of the top 5 city parks in the country, according to USA Today readers. Those readers recently voted Centennial Park as one of the top 5 best in the United States. And after all, how many of the others have a replica of the Parthenon? But this Saturday, I hope you'll join us at Centennial Park for this year's Nashville Earth Day Festival. For more information, visit nashvilleearthday.org. Then on Monday at 12:30 p.m., I'm excited to join Metro Parks to cut the ribbon on our newest greenway, the Cumberland River Greenway in Bluff Landing, a $3 million investment to activate the greenway along the growing South Bank neighborhood. And with that, happy to answer questions. Megan.
So when we're looking at some of the stuff that happened this week with the ruling that came down from the appellate court or Court of Appeals, when we're looking at the affordable housing, we kind of heard on the floor during this week's council meeting that some people expected affordable housing to be part of this, and so I'm wondering, do you have plans to try to pursue other types of grants to pursue that type of outbuild? And also, do you think it affected the vote that happened in November, given that people thought that there might be some affordable housing attached?
I don't think it really was an important factor for voters' consideration because we knew, and I think voters were responding principally to those 4 core pillars of the program, which were really the mobility-focused areas. The sidewalk, signal service, and safety is what I think really was happening. And I think you're seeing 2 things happen right now with housing. You've got the housing and infrastructure study that council is currently considering, and the unified housing strategy that we're hoping gets finalized in time for the budget. And across all of those things, you're still seeing opportunities for transit-oriented development. Ticket to Ride is going to take us right to Donaldson Station, where we've seen strong private sector interest in redeveloping the area right there. Regional Transportation Authority has gotten already a mix of state and federal and local funding to support that, and I think you're going to continue to see people generally want to be building in alignment with our transit corridor. So that portion of the ruling does not deeply concern us.
I could ask a little bit more about transit and transportation in general, and maybe just the roads. Middle Tennessee, we've heard a lot about Middle Tennessee maybe being a target of the state to kind of allocate funds to help some of the infrastructure. Is that talks that you've been having at the state level?
Yeah, we've had for really my entire time in office important conversations with TDOT, ranging from we wanted them to be not only aware of but partners in Choose How You Move. We just actually had a briefing. Kendra attended that with me with TDOT to talk about status of the program as we start to implement with funds. Meanwhile, similarly, Bob Mendez, our Chief Development Officer, and I have been in constant conversation with them about East Bank infrastructure needs, and specifically the parts where TDOT's involvement is going to be most necessary as we think about the bridges that impact the East Bank and then state routes. There are regular conversations. I mean, they are advancing not only the overall Transportation Modernization Act, but also their consideration of choice lanes. And so, again, it's a constant conversation. It's not yet clear exactly how those funds would be available to us or what impact they might have on all of those conversations. Yeah.
With threats to cut funding for DEI programs happening nationwide, the bill that's moving through the Tennessee Senate and House right now, could you just give an update on Metro Government's DEI office, what is or is not impacting you guys, and if funding cuts were to come to Nashville, kind of what is the game plan for diversity?
Yeah, I would say from our standpoint, when I looked at where we were when we first got the Metro Human Relations Commission's reports on inclusivics years ago, I think there is real value in making sure that a government reflects its city. And so I think you also find unignorable parts of data in everything ranging from what we've seen in the housing and infrastructure study, where there are tremendous gaps between all Nashvillians and subsets of Nashvillians demographically in terms of ability to attain affordable housing. And, we continue to see gender pay equity gaps. So there are real points of data that don't have to do with a policy outlook that may be under attack right now. They have to do with how people are really engaging in the world in terms of salaries and access to everything from housing to healthcare. And I think it's very, very important to respond if you see a portion of the community that, for instance, is experiencing higher maternal and infant mortality rates. As a city, we want to be able to address that. So it's why when we see programs experience deep cuts like what we just saw after announcing a countywide expansion of Nashville Strong Babies, watching federal funding cuts to that may impact that program is very difficult. We're also being very careful not to preemptively adjust to things, and so our Metro Legal Department does have engaged expertise on DEI at the federal level and from a policy landscape, and they continue to give us guidance on where things are. We're not likely to make proactive changes, but if we find that there are federal programs that require a compliance level to some specific DEI criteria that we're not able to meet, we will make that determination in conjunction with legal and finance. In the meantime, state law changes. I mean, Darren Jernigan and our team and the Department of Law continue to analyze that, and when session is closed and we know when the impacted bills go into effect, we'll do what Metro does every year, which is look at that analysis, give departmental guidance, and so forth. But we're trying to be responsible, we're trying to take care of Nashvillians, and we're trying to do that in a way that is also fully legal. Yeah.
Cities like Mount Juliet have definitely seen some notable success when it comes to LPRs. Looking at that, have y'all considered changing your mind on your stance with LPRs or any updates for that?
Our stance hasn't changed. We've been looking within weeks of taking office. We started engaging the community to address concerns, and we have a policy framework we're ready to run. I think what you've seen upstairs in the Metro Council is they can't even get to consideration of a resolution asking us to bring LPR policy there. So I would say we are ready to bring overall responsible frameworks for a variety of public safety tools to the Metro Council, and we are waiting on them to be ready to introduce them to the community. We continue to have those conversations with community members, with council members, and you can see in the recent Vandy poll the level of popularity for the frameworks we're talking about.
Do you have an update on the pods?
We are concerned that one of the specific federal funding cuts that hit the Metro Public Health Department a few weeks ago that caused us to be in a position where we had to say goodbye to a handful of Metro employees that had federal funding as the basis for their salaries is impacting that timeline. And so we are still working. Darren Jernigan is working closely with local and state partners to get that stuff done, but it has, I would say, the impact caused us to have to adjust how we're approaching it on a fiscal basis and timeline basis. So still hoping to get them out, hoping that happens this year, but that federal uncertainty did impact the timeline.
Do you think that's going to affect the closure of Old Tennessee?
That mostly relied, I will say, the Office of Homeless Services and the other partners working there were reliant on housing surge provided mostly by a hospitality hub, and so they were a new partner in the space of rapid rehousing, and so right now we don't expect any impact there because of that. That closure notice was not reliant on immediate availability of the pallet shelters. Yeah.
Because since the property reappraisal process is now complete, how do you plan on moving forward with potential property tax increases?
Well, it's incredibly complicated because what will end up happening is we get the appraisal data, then we know sort of average increases in property values. I'll say I fully expect my property value to have increased since the last time appraisals were there. And then we make adjustments based on revenue forecast and expenditure needs within departments. And so what will typically probably end up happening is we understand property values, the state equalization law requires us to equalize, and then we set a property tax rate based on where the budget is. So we expect across the board we should be able to set a historically low property tax rate, but also that an increase in property values will mean that some Nashvillians pay more in property taxes as a result. But that we'll all have that finalized. We have to have a budget filed by May 1st, so give us a couple weeks. Nate?
It's an increase. You're going to raise the rate. You already know that.
Well, raise the rate. You said from what?
From where the appraisal lowers it, from where the appraisal lowers it.
From the equalization process, the rate will come up from that, but the rate will come down from its current spot.
I had a question about the racetrack. What is your approach to this? Are you trying to negotiate the best possible deal to fix up the racetrack, or are you still deciding whether you want to do anything with the racetrack?
We're still looking at the range of options, and I would say for anybody who has a charter compliant idea about improvements, our door is always open. We are, as we have been from day one, interested in talking to the fair board and director about the overall operations of the fairgrounds, where I think we've seen some really great progress on overall utilization, some ongoing challenges with parking and access and infrastructure. We have talked to the team multiple times about their success. We have continued to talk to Bristol and other parties that have ideas, so we are not at a decision point yet.
And have you heard anything more from John Ingram about his affordable housing commitment that he made?
We have not. Yeah.
While we're here on the,
Oh, sorry. I'll come back there. Steve hasn't had a chance yet, so we'll come to Steve.
while we're here on the racetrack, a racetrack in the last iteration looked like it would cost the city somewhere in the 75 to whatever range, $75 to $100 million range. Given the fluid budget dynamics that are going on right now at the federal level and trying to figure out some things with the state, do you anticipate anything in this budget cycle on the speedway?
Not right now, but I will say in this dynamic, it would be hard to recommend to the Metro Council an approach that caused us to look at capital spending in that range. But it's one of the things that's on the table is understanding exactly what those costs would be. But I'll say it this way. The operating budget wouldn't absorb most of the cost. It would be a factor of where a capital spending plan would put us in terms of debt as a share of operating. I'll come back. All right, coming back.
I've had a few neighbors in like the Gallatin downtown area kind of reach out to me, really frustrated about like loud exhaust, street racing, unauthorized ATVs, like dirt bikes in the area. Do you have any enforcement strategies that are currently in place, and what are those, and kind of anything to ramp up that?
Yeah, and this is, it's an interesting moment because I personally witnessed actually a traffic stop related to somebody in a Corvette, basically what I would say in a mix of reckless driving and extremely loud disruptive behavior on the roadway. And within seconds, a member of MMPD's Motors was there and did a traffic stop. And so what I think you've seen is MMPD absolutely has been aware of council member and community interest, but we're also in an environment where we are looking at staffing levels for them where we know we're intent on opening the Southeast Precinct this year, so we have to staff into that. And one of their best overall responses so far this year has been Chief Drake's introduction of the new D detail, and that's already produced payoffs in terms of, I think, an increase in traffic stops for those kinds of scenarios as an enforcement strategy, but also improving response times in Southeast Nashville, where I think a lot of these driving concerns outside of the urban core have been most concentrated. So I've seen some headway there.
One more?
Oh gosh, I gotta go here, guys.
I've got one about housing and infrastructure and the housing and infrastructure study, where among all of those preliminary findings so far, one of them was this idea that zoning reform is one of those pieces to the puzzle of filling that gap over the next decade in housing need. So I was curious from your perspective, when you think about a dialogue around, especially just Nashvillians, not planners or anything, but just neighborhoods, about the appetite for zoning reform on a scale that would get us there, when there maybe is this opposing idea of, we care about the character of our neighborhoods, things like that. What does that dialogue look like for you moving forward in kind of getting to a meaningful position on zoning reform?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess two things I would say. I knew this for the 8 years that I was on Metro Council, which is that zoning, fundamentally, the last stop for zoning conversations is Metro Council. And so I think there will be a considerable amount of council interactivity in that way. I'll also say, though, this year is the 10-year anniversary of Nashville Next. And when I took office, I knew, and that was one of the first conversations I had with Director Lucy Kempf. And so I think on a citywide basis, it is important to re-examine Nashville Next, which contains community plans for just about every major part of the community, and kind of draw lessons learned, factor in the input we're getting from council, look at the policy recommendations from Nashville Next, and kind of go back out to the city and open back up that question of, hey, is this still where we are 10 years later, with an emphasis on cities and corridors and an understandable tension between growth and preservation, and how do we kind of re-enter that conversation? But I think it'll stick after we do that and kind of re-examine Nashville next, I think most of the important conversations about zoning are going to happen in the Metro Council. All right, thanks everybody.